What if I issued a counter argument? Can I issue a counter argument?
These are the Christian. I'm gonna say they're Trump supporters, but
Christian
they might even be part of some very questionable Reddit forums, Doctor. So this is what I just want to preface that by saying whatever they say, we don't agree with it.
r/the Donald.
And also, I will say, Doctor, too, that they're also hypocrites because the one on the left has spread his ass cheeks and showed them to a woman here on this podcast consensually. She wanted it more than him.
She wanted to see his asshole
more than he did,
and he did.
And then he, with the aforementioned guy who went up into the attic and gave a guy a blowjob, received a blowjob, he and this guy right here double teamed a fan on the beach. They don't always practice what they preach. I just want to make that clear.
I like that you're clarifying it was a double team and not a threesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes it gets a little twisted.
See, that's sexist in its own right. But
my counter argument.
It's okay. We don't. Okay, to that. Yeah, perfect.
Basically, not necessarily sex work, but this whole like super pro sex. Like it's perfectly fine if you just want to go have a gangbang with like 50 people. But there are like statistical problems with that. Like children out of wedlock being 12 times more likely to, be impoverished. And then you have all these like illegitimate kids and other...
Yeah,
well,
12 sounds a little high, but it's definitely true.
I'm just using...
The doctor's going to need some math.
General explanation that there are benefits to monogamy and not just having sex with anybody that, wants to have sex with you. So as like a physician or whatever that you've gone to school, like, is there legitimacy to that or...
No, I don't think so. No. I mean, I appreciate your opinion, but I don't think that it holds because there are a lot of other variables that we have to take into consideration. And when you improve things like sex education and you teach people how to have healthier sex, safer sex, you actually reduce the likelihood of unwanted pregnancies.
I mean, I agree with that, but if my friend went up to me and said, hey, bro, I just had sex with like a bunch, like 12 people at the same time, I wouldn't be like, good job, man, go you. I'd be like...
But why not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's based.
Because there's a lot of like societal issues that happen with that. I mean,
and what if there weren't?
How could you not have? I mean,
what if he used 12 condoms?
It's the same thing as drugs.
What if he used 12 different condoms?
See, I think what is really hard for a lot of people to kind of understand is the ways that we've been really socialized in an unconscious and conscious way to be incredibly sex negative and incredibly rigid around sexuality and to assign and conflate it with our worthiness as human beings.
No, but I'm just talking about it's an evolutionary like monogamy is an evolutionary thing that we've built over time. I mean, I assume it's just because you raise kids better if you're not knocking up a bunch of chicks all the time by accident. I mean, now we have condoms and birth control and stuff, but in the past, I assume that wasn't the case, and that's why it was probably a lot to have illegitimate kids everywhere or somebody accidentally impregnating your girl and then you're raising another man's baby. I don't think there's a person in the whole planet that would want that to happen.
Well, a long time ago, we used to live in communities and be far less invested in individual pair bonding. So when we started making the shift toward a more agricultural type of being, we started to divide things like land and resources, and that's when it started to become more important to folks that, I want to make sure that all of these children I'm feeding are being fed from the resources that are mine and that they are mine, right? Otherwise, I would like their resources to come from someone else's pile. So it was sort of an arbitrary decision. I don't say arbitrary, but it made sense at the time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the way it needs to be forever or that there's some sort of fault in people who choose non-monogamy.
What about like divorce rates for people who wait until marriage to have sex? It's basically statistically proven that they're less likely to be divorced because then if you have a whole bunch of sexual partners your whole life and then you get with the person that emotionally you really connect with, but you're so used to this suck and fuck mentality, and then maybe your partner isn't
that needs
like
to be a
that.
T-shirt.
Doctor,
suck and fuck mentality.
Doctor, how do you argue when somebody quotes like statistical things and there's no like he doesn't have a bibliography or anything to show? Like, how do you argue that, or what do you say to that?
I think you don't. You just sort of assume it's an emotional argument.
It is an emotional argument for him.
Identity-based argument.
Identity-based.
Can I try to summarize a little bit what I think both of you are saying? One thing I agree with what the doctor said is that the communities that I see the highest level of unwanted pregnancies are the communities where they're kind of toying with religious fundamentalism and sexual experimentation. It's always the semi-Catholic girl who ends up popping out a baby at 16. It's always a girl in Utah who was a practicing Mormon.
They also don't tend to get abortions.
The Latinos in LA are extremely Catholic, and that is usually why they might, like, I knew a few girls that had children like in high school.
And if you took the shame away from reproductive education, I think those pregnancies would be vastly reduced. However, to give Austin's point here some support, I don't think it can be argued that children raised in single households have a lower chance of success in life than those raised by two parents.
Correct.
I mean, statistics there are pretty obvious. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like if I was raised up my
saying?
whole life with random dudes coming into my house like all the time, like if I say my parents were in this open relationship and I'm like a 9-year-old kid and then, you know, this random guy's coming over to bang my mom, like that's probably going to fuck up your head, you know?
So you're not talking about non-monogamy though here. You're talking about poor parental boundaries.
I'm talking about there are sexual behaviors and things that you can say are probably a net negative, generally speaking, for most people.
Let me
just
simplify-
like doing drugs for most people probably isn't a good idea, but there are those portion of people that can do drugs very, very responsibly.
Can I just simplify it even more? Doctor, just single parent household, 2-parent household, the children in the single parent household are less likely to go on to career success and happiness later in life.
I jumped to a
I
different
don't know
point.
that.
I kind of messed that up.
No, I don't know that that's
It's
true.
about 12
What is your
less likely to be
let's
impoverished.
let her counter real quick. What is your take on that situation? Why do you not know that?
Well, because I haven't read the most recent research on that, and I don't think anyone in this room has either.
Do you think there is
So
a bias, though, for very
that's probably true.
pro-sex
Let's-
research? Like, I don't see anyone having, like, a counter-argument to any of this kind of pro-sex mentality, even within, like, the educational fields, just because it's so shunned down with, like, the media and stuff. I feel like...
Well, I think that's an incredibly biased perspective. There are people on all sides of this conversation who are doing a lot of research, and certainly there are a lot of people who are more sexually conservative who have been doing research for a long time. So that research does exist. But there is absolutely a trending movement to have more inclusive sex-positive research because it's necessary. It's necessary because, you know, certain groups have decided these are the values that we are going to live by, right? And that's great for those groups. But those groups do not get to dictate the lifestyle and the values of other groups of folks. So we have to have a little bit more of a tolerant, expansive understanding of the diversity of sexual behavior that is healthy and natural and okay if we stop conflating it with worth as a human being.
I didn't say anything about worth, though. It was pragmatic, like the way it affects families and societies. I don't think of Brooks any less because he's going out and doing any things. Value-wise, I just had a gangbang on a beach or a double team. I'm not really like, I guess Danny said I'm a hypocrite or whatever, but I'm willing to have those kind of conversations.
To your point, if I think it is less relevant who the people having sex would be. If two parents are having sex just with each other in front of their kids a lot, that's going to leave a really indelible mark on the psyche of their children. Who's to say more or less of a mark if they were people from outside the relationship? I don't think there's any research on that. But definitely,
I don't know. I'm just very grateful my parents weren't swingers.
She was saying that she's saying if a parent is making the decision to have sex in front of a child with their partner, with their father or a rando, either way, that's the problem is they're having sex in front of their child.
Dude, if random guys are coming in and out of your house and you're 9 years old, you know what's up. You're not stupid. You know they're banging.
Maybe.
Can we? So Austin, I think we should move on right now. But I do want you to pull up though, because I don't think you could argue it, Doctor, that children raised in double parent households go on to more success later in life.
I think I could make that argument because there are a lot of children who are raised in double parent households where that double parent dynamic was absolutely toxic, destructive, abusive. Maybe they were, subject to a parent who was not getting help for mental health issues or addiction issues. And that dynamic could absolutely interrupt an otherwise healthy trajectory if those parents had lived separately.
Yeah, absolutely. 2-parent households can produce rotten children. Evidence is Leandro Dottavio sitting to my left.
Right here. No, I was going to say, I was going to mention.
Statistically, I mean, if you pull it up, I don't know. I'm not smart. I'm not a researcher.
I said, can we even trust anything that's online, doctor? For example, like where's the real research? Is it somewhere in the research halls of a university? Like where's the real research?
That's a great question.
Because everything we Google, I mean, who cares?
Yeah, you've got to be able to think critically about research. You've got to think about who constructed the study.
Right.
How is it constructed? What's their motivation? What statistics are they using? How are they interpreting it? There's a lot of actual critique that's required to even think about if a study is valid. So, your question is really on point, but to be fair, asking the Google, if it's not an empirically validated or peer-reviewed study, it probably isn't something you should put a ton of stock in.